The 17th chapter, Grubbers Harbor, the voice on the wind. Sail away, sail away, sail away, from the daring diary of Captain Flashpowder. With his trusty crew complete, Stitch had felt more ready than ever for a pirate's life. They crept through the cobbled streets of Grubbers Nubbin and followed the winding road down to the sea. Dawn was beginning to break over the horizon when Stitch had smelled the sharp, salty air of the ocean. They had arrived at Grubbers Harbor. The sea was even more magnificent than it had been in Stitchhead's imagination. It stretched endlessly into the distance, a great gleaming ocean of possibility. Who knew what adventures were waiting for him out there? "Okay, let's get this party started," said Arabella. In the near distance was a rounded bay, filled with a dozen or more boats and ships. At the far end of the harbor, several hefty sailors were loading a large ship with cargo. Stitchhead and his trusty crew were careful not to be seen as they hurried down to the bay and along a wooden walkway that jutted out into the sea. As soon as they reached the end, the creature hefted the gadabout off its shoulders and deposited it in the water. "It still floats," it cried happily. For a moment, they all watched the ship bob about. "Well, don't just stand there gawking, landlubbers," said Arabella. She jumped into the ship, followed by the creature, who took up almost the whole deck. For a moment, Stitch had paused. Then, "Hoist the middle mast," he cried, leaping aboard. He grabbed the ship's wheel and did his best to steer as the tide carried them out to sea. "We did it," cried Stitchhead, looking back. In the far distance, he could just make out the distant spires of Castle Grotskew. Onward to adventure. He cast his pirate's eye out to sea and felt the chill air whistle past his ears. It sounded like a voice, as if the ocean itself was whispering to him, "Unhand me, you fiends." Oddly, the ocean sounded rather like his master. "I said, unhand me. I'm too important to be manhandled." "Master?" he whispered. He could have sworn he heard the professor. "You okay, Stitchhead?" asked the creature, trying to find a place to sit on the tiny ship. Stitchhead looked back and peered across the bay to the large ship. On the ship's ramp were two men were arguing. He could only see one of them clearly. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick black beard. The other was short and fat, with spindly legs. He was dragging a large sack that writhed and squirmed. As the gadabout bobbed out of the bay, Stitch had strained to hear what the men were saying. "Now see here, it took me forever to book a ship that would take any cargo. No questions asked, you said. A human being is not cargo. I be the captain of this ship, by criminy. It be my neck on the line if we're caught. It's more money you're after, is it?" "Lugs and mumbles, you drive a hard bargain, Captain." Stitch had watched as the fat man handed the captain a wad of money. The captain nodded, and the fat man began hefting the sack onto the edge of one of the empty crates. As he turned, Stitch had finally got a look at his face. His eye grew wide. Including the professor, Stitchhead had only met 3 people in his almost life, and the fat man was one of them. "Fulbert Freakfinder," he whispered, his mouth agape. Stitch had watched as Freak Finder emptied out the sack. A bony, silver-haired old man fell out and tumbled into the crate. Oof! You can't treat me like this. I'm an award-winning mad professor. It was Professor Erasmus.